In the studio, we have Papatoetoe High School Principal Vaughan Couillault with us. Welcome, Vaughan. It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Likewise, happy to be here.
So, there's been a lot of commentary in the news recently about the school lunch issue. How has it affected your school, if any? And you've told me in the preparing for this interview that you have a lot of neurodiversity students. So how has it affected their routines and school structure and all that kind of jazz?
Yeah, sure. So we've been part of the school lunch program since it started. So we've been in it for about 3 years now. The 3 years before this new model, of course, this year. It's really added value. So in terms of the structure and routine, we tried to build in the lunches into the existing routine rather than creating something new, because much like regular students, neurodiverse students like the surety of knowing what's happening when you get to school, having the comfort of a timetable, and not being met with too many surprises. I'm like that too, actually. I sort of like to have a to-do list and like to get it done, but it never gets done. But anyway, that's another story. And so in terms of what we've had for 3 years, it's been really consistent and has worked really well. I suppose from the new model that's been in the media, we're lucky we haven't had too much disruption. We probably had 2 or 3 days where the lunches were a little bit late, but we're only talking, in terms of impact on students, we're only talking about 15 minutes, half an hour, that sort of thing, which is not particularly disruptive. And we haven't had anything that we haven't been able to fix so that students, essentially students don't know that there's been a little bit of a mess up. And so we're fortunate. But I do have colleagues really close to me who I communicate with on a regular basis where the lunches haven't turned up till 2:30, which is problematic, right? You can't remedy that. So on my campus, we've been really lucky that it hasn't really impacted students at all. In fact, I think the new model, the kids prefer the hot lunches every day. It's just the bell, excuse me a sec. It's not a fire alarm, don't freak out. In our previous model, it was pita pit every day, right? So a variant of a sandwich and some stuff in it. Whereas this one, you got mac and cheese one day, you got lasagna another day, you got meatballs, you got Texy-Mexy stuff. It's all good. And so the students are, I'd have to say, on the whole, enjoying it.
Yeah, because I see you're the president of one of the associations, so you deal with multiple schools. Have you had to talk to the Mr. Seymour in your capacity as the president?
Absolutely. Not particularly about school lunches yet, but we are meeting with Minister Seymour as soon as next week. So I do have time with Minister Seymour next week, and where we'll be talking about lunches, where we'll be talking about the stepped attendance response, which is also in his wheelhouse from an education perspective. But we have had fairly direct and regular communications with the Ministry of Education people who are responsible for the school lunches program. And also, my school helped sort of try and resolve the halal issue that was in the media for a little bit. We had some direct input there. So operationally, we've been doing stuff day to day, and I'll meet with Mr. Seymour next week.
Paul's been covering the halal issue on his programming, so I'll get Paul to ask a few questions around that if he wouldn't mind.
Well, I saw David Seymour, I think it was last night, put out a post saying that 99.9% of all school lunches this week arrived on time, which is obviously an improvement on what we've seen in the past with those teething issues. There's another, I think, 2 weeks left of the school term, something like that. Is that, being a long time since I've had kids in school, is this the first term that we're in still, or is this second term?
It's first term. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. From your interaction with other schools, are they seeing an improvement as well over time, like current teething issues where it is now?
Yeah. So there was a little chat group of like-minded principals, like me and 3 mates, and we'd communicate with each other on a daily basis. What's happening with yours? How much time have you spent on lunches today? Blah, blah, blah. In the first few weeks of the program, totally quietened down now. We've sort of got our routines right. We've worked out what staffing levels we need on site. The guys driving trucks have worked out, or the people driving trucks have worked out, which route's faster in practice as opposed to theory, which school we should drop off at first, even though that might not be the first one on the way. It just, there's a whole lot of that logistics and sort of grown-up planning stuff that has just settled. Our most recent issue where things were late was because they had a different driver. Our regular driver called in sick. And from a continuity point of view, that shouldn't make a difference, but it did. I would say that the dust has really settled on all of that.
In terms of those meal issues that cropped up, the halal meals that had non-halal meat, vegetarian meals that have had meat in them, the media obviously likes to grab on some things that make headlines. Has that been an issue as big as the media has made out? And is that an issue that's been resolved satisfactorily for those students that would be dealing with the impact of that?
Yeah, so just on the halal issue, there wasn't any ingredients used that weren't halal. All of the ingredients were halal and had been sourced appropriately. However, the kitchen wasn't certified. So it was about the prep. However, when we got people that own the kitchen and FIANZ, which is the Federation of International Muslim Associations, of Islamic Associations of New Zealand, I should say. When we got FIANZ and the provider in a room, on the surface of it, the FIANZ team were quite happy with the processes. It's just that the business hadn't officially certified its kitchen. So that was probably more... Again, that was a grown-up logistics piece more than in practice going to be a problem for people on the ground. So there wasn't any inappropriate ingredients. I'm not aware of any meat stuff in the vegetarian stuff, but that just didn't get to me. But there certainly has been a lot of work in terms of getting that menu right. One of the things that was a big there's lots of photos taken of it, was the fact that the mac and cheese wasn't coping with the rethermalization, because all of these meals are made about a month ago, and then they go through this high-tech chilling, freezing thing, and then they get rethermalized on the day, and the mac and cheese wasn't staying together, it was turning into goop. They seem to have remedied the goop situation.
What about the importing of meals? Has that been an impact for anybody that you've come across? I can understand from a media perspective, they're bringing in stuff from Australia, but from the end result with the students, is it impacting them?
I wasn't aware that they were doing that, to be perfectly honest, and I couldn't tell the difference with the stuff that we've got. There's been some, I'd have to say, our students on my campus have really enjoyed the variety. And when this is nutritionists that are listening to this are going to not like it, but the Pie Friday that we had a couple of weeks ago, because there was some supply chain issues, was the most well-attended day in all of our schools of the year, because they knew the pies were coming, right? And so, I think if in the program they continue to be innovative and flex and do stuff that isn't just Meatball Monday, Taco Tuesday, Bolognese Wednesday, if they just keep away from that menu fatigue, which they seem to have been doing okay at so far, then the kids will keep interested and probably have a better lunch story than I had when I was a kid.
They didn't have school lunches when I was there. It was always go down to the tuck shop and spend money on pies.
Absolutely right. And schools still have those tuck shops. So those tuck shops still exist. And so my school has a lunches program, but also you can go to the tuck shop if you want. If you're choosing to not have the school lunch and want to get your own stuff, that's still an option for you.
I know, and again, long time since I've been at school, our tuck shop was also used as kind of a fundraising avenue for the school. I don't know if that's still the case, but do you know if there's been an impact on the turnover within the tuck shop since this program's been installed, or not really because you guys were doing the program beforehand?
Yeah, so there aren't too many schools that I'm aware of left that run their own, because of now the requirements to do food safety plans and operate it like a business and all that sort of stuff. The vast majority of people that I'm aware of contract that out to a provider and either take profit share or simply rent out the space. It's a rental agreement thing. So the sort of days of it being a genuine fundraiser and all the money going back to the school, they've probably gone a little bit. Might be a little bit more the case in smaller schools or perhaps in a primary setting, but in a secondary setting where it's big and grunty and lots, we generally outsource that to providers.
Did you have so you obviously had the old model. Did you prefer that, or do you prefer this model?
I think the kids prefer this model because of the variety. So there's an increased variety, and the capacity of hot meals is greater. Under our previous model, we could only sort of do hot meals for half the school on any given day because we literally didn't have enough power to keep them warm in the facility that we were constructing them. So it was an electricity issue, right? I think organisationally, I preferred the old model. It was more flexible. I could give them a couple of days' notice, and they would change the quantum of lunches. Or Blake, if you decided that you wanted to become vegetarian next week, I could give them that information today, and it would be ready for Monday. Whereas under this centralised model, it's got to be 2 weeks' notice. So the old one was a lot more flexible for me, but the menu wasn't as dynamic. And whereas this one, there's a lot more capacity to change the menu up.
So therefore, do you think Mr. Seymour need to find a middle ground between the two models, and will you be encouraging him to look at that?
I think that is a very intelligent statement, Blake. I think the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. And so I think it is fair to say that we probably had too much money being spent on it previously. And the pendulum was right over this side. It swung right back to down to sort of bare bonesy stuff. And I think there's room for a little bit of movement, particularly in terms of what it actually costs schools on the ground to do the admin of the lunches. And I've spoken about that in the media before with regard to just the cleaning up. You put 1,700 teenagers in a room with food. It doesn't matter how much you tell them what to do. There's going to be goo on the floor and stuff not in a rubbish bin or a bowl not stacked properly or whatever. And so that just requires grown-ups to do it. And the example I've given in the past is, Blake or Paul, the last time you had people over to your house for dinner, right, or went to someone else's house for dinner, they had a lot of cleanup to do after you left, and you love them, right? Those are people you care about, and they're still, oh man, I've got to do all the dishes, I've got to fill the dishwasher up, I've got to do this. And so there's just admin around large numbers of people eating food, which weren't considered. So they're the middle ground. I think you're right, Blake. I think you nailed it.
Out of curiosity, how much involvement do the students have in the process? Because I know there are some places, like David was on Q&A pointing out, some kids get pulled out of class to help with the organisation, the prep, and the distribution. On the whole, how much impact does that involvement have on students?
Yeah. So you want kids to be in class learning, improving their literacy and numeracy skills, right? And so we want to try and minimise out of class time. Yep, there's some learning that can happen. So a school that may be doing their own lunch program, for example, might have that part of the hospitality and catering course, and so it's part of the credits and part of the learning program, which is quite different from me saying to some of my year 13s, actually, it's a real mess down there today. Can you guys skip calculus and come and get on the end of a mop? So there's two sort of ends to that spectrum. Most of us have got our systems right that it has a very light impact in terms of needing kids out of class. So in my school, for example, I've got 4 staff that I bring in at 10 o'clock every day, and they do the lunch program for 2.5 hours, which is everything from the throwing it into the boxes to the last grain of rice being swept off the ground. I couldn't do that with students. I couldn't take 4 kids out all learning for 2.5 hours a day or whatever it was. It's just not viable. However, the kids are still responsible at the beginning of form time to go and get the boxes and do the lunch monitoring type gig where you go and get from. So the students still go and get from and bring back to their form class. And then at the end of form time, when lunch is done, they take back and do a little bit of the rubbish processing, but it's really just about hey, put your rubbish in that bin there and put your box over there, and we'll clean it entirely and do the rest of it. So it's light touch.
Going
Is there an increase in waste in it?
Sorry, Paul.
I was just thinking that the containers themselves, I don't know much about them. I don't know if they're recyclable or anything like that.
Oh yeah. Right. So, do you want me to answer that one, Blake, or have you got which one do you want me to go with?
So I was going to ask you, tie it in with that. You said about the pendulum. Do you think Seymour's gone too far to the other side now?
Yes, I think there was probably a little bit too much taken out of it, or some things that were missed in terms of what the ministry should pay for. And so, it's convenient that middle of the year is when budgets get set, and we've had a couple of terms worth of experimenting with this program, and so I think it would be sensible to revisit that. And I'm sure he has taken on board the on-the-ground costs that were band-aided for term 1 and term 2. So schools have got a little bit of funding. The bigger schools like mine have got a little bit of funding in terms of those on-the-ground costs. But for me alone, I reckon it's about 20 or 30 grand short a year in terms of what my actual costs are. Paul, you were asking about the nature of the containers.
Yeah, well, I know that there's been news recently about containers that weren't rated for heating, and that's caused issues. But also, from what I understand, a lot of the containers are metallic because it retains the heat and it makes it easier for the freezing process. I'm kind of curious about the waste management of it all. Like, how much of it is recycled compared to the old system?
Yeah. So for me, the old system was something in a paper wrapper, right? Whether it was a sandwich or a pita pit or whatever, sub or whatever. And so for me, there was only a piece of paper that was the rubbish, and any food debris that's around. So we didn't really have containers. Sometimes we do little cardboard, those cardboard boxy things that you can sometimes get at a cafe. So that type of thing, which was all relatively easy to manage. With the new system, the hot stuff is in an aluminium tray. I should have brought one actually, but they're in an aluminium tray, say about this big. They request that we recycle those trays, so it means you've got to pull the plastic right off the top to sort of shake all the goo out and stack them up and return them for recycling. Anything that's not the aluminium tray can go into landfill, so it all biodegrades and all of that sort of stuff. And so, but those lunches themselves in their aluminium tray with the plastic thing on the top all come in a large thermo box thing. So if you those polystyrene fish bins, those big white polystyrene things with the polystyrene lid, it's pretty much those, right? Canberra box or whatever it is. So that's how they arrive en masse, but they're not, of course, in class boxes for us. They're just like all of my mac and cheese are in these boxes, and all of my vegetarian dal are another one. So my team have to take them out of those hot boxes and put them into big Sistema plastic ones that then go off to the kids, and then they bring the plastic ones back, and we return all the polystyrene dudes filled with the aluminium trays if we've done it. Everything else goes into genuine rubbish, and the School Lunch Collective take the rubbish away with them. So we empty polystyrene boxes, bags of goo, take it away. Yeah.
So therefore, have you had any of the issues that have been reported in the media about the parent not looking great, and or has that been blown out of proportion in your opinion too?
Look, we certainly, the mac and cheese didn't start well. It had a poor start to life. Let's be fair, but they seem to have resolved that matter. So the mac and cheese stuff looked awful. It doesn't now. There's been a couple of cycles of that where it actually looks pretty good. And I think the way I've tried to explain it before is if you go to, like, when you go to McDonald's, right, and you look at the picture of the Big Mac on the screen, and then you sort of open your box, you go, hey, well, hang on, that doesn't look anything like that, right? Or if you went to any nice restaurant and you had yourself a nice lasagna at an Italian restaurant or something, if you then took that lasagna that's beautifully presented on a plate and squished it into an aluminium tray, it would start to look a bit meh, right? And so the fact that the container is small and compact is having an impact on what it looks like, right? However, by and large, that they've started to sort that out. They've worked out their rethermalizing, their technology's settling down. And have we had issues with trays splitting in the box in transport? Absolutely. Have we had to throw out 200 or 300 on any given day because the plastic seal hasn't stayed? Yep. Occasionally we've had to do that. We've always been able to create a remedy for that. We haven't had anyone burnt or injured or anything, and we haven't had heaps of days where people have gone hungry or where everything is just a disaster. Look, it is really easy to take a photo of a burnt tray of meatballs, but there was probably 50,000 other trays that were fine.
Mm-hmm. So, what is your hope, just to finish off, what is your hope for the future of the program?
That's an interesting question, right? Because there's been a bit of media commentary where you go, hey, it's the parents' job, you guys sort it out, you can't feed your kids while you're having them, right? And then there's the other side of, we live in essentially a bit of a socialist driven or social welfare driven state where we want to look after those who haven't got all the skills or resources to look after themselves or can't. And so there's the balance in between. And so allowing a school to be part of the program and kids to opt out of it if they don't need or want the lunches is fine. So in my campus, for example, we've got 1,800 students here, but we only order about 1,400 or 1,500 lunches a day because the students that don't want to, we know that there's people going to be away, so there's no point generating a whole lot of food waste. I think the program for me has added significant value in a couple of spaces. It's hard to work out attendance because it's not that simple, but we have far fewer fights that we don't understand the reason for at lunchtimes because you're not hangry. The old ads about getting hangry at 3:00. We don't have that silly spontaneous stuff so much. Yes, schools are still dealing with behaviour management challenges that are born of people's skill sets, but they're not born of I'm hungry today. And so there's been that's been addressed. We've also been able to support people for longer in the day because for some students, whilst yes, it should be their parents' job to give them lunches, they're not doing that. And I know that the Prime Minister has said just get a Marmite sandwich. And yep, that's absolutely fine to have a Marmite sandwich if breakfast and lunch is a lot more nutritionally robust. And for some students, the best meal they get is the one that we give them at 11 o'clock every morning. And so, it's a real social service that we're doing. So I'd like to see it continue. There are a number of jurisdictions around the world that feed everyone every day. I don't think we need to get into that space in New Zealand just yet. But seeing this program continue, seeing the rough edges sanded off, I know that for my students here, who I care about deeply, it's making a difference to their daily lives and making attendance easier, making engagement easier for them. It hasn't removed, it's not a silver bullet in terms of engagement and attendance, but it is making things easier, which is the whole point of spending public money.
Any last questions for you, Paul?
No, this has been fascinating. I've learned so much, actually. It's really awesome to hear the perspective of somebody within the system. That's not all, the media blowing things up. It's really cool.
Well, I'll say thank you, Vaughan, for coming on the program today, and please stay with us.